Well, I'm going to bring up Bonnie from backstage. So, Bonnie, you're coming up now. Join me here, and we can see you, we can hear you. You've even got your festive virtual background. I love
Of
it.
course, it's
I
holiday
love it.
time. It was necessary. I've
It's
had
the
this up for the
most
last
wonderful
week or so,
time of the
actually.
year.
It's been fantastic. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. So, for those of you, Bonnie is the Senior Director of Product and Technical Learning. So, I'm looking forward to this. And can we get a round of emojis for Bonnie and everything that she's going to bring to us? She's going to be talking about maximizing micro learning effectiveness through governance and stakeholder involvement, which I'm really looking forward to this. And I have a lot of questions. So, if we have time, I look forward to chatting to you afterwards. With that,
Absolutely.
I'm going to hand it over to you. You go run with it, and then I'll
Okay.
be back here and I'll jump in whenever you need me.
Excellent, excellent. I can't think of a better person to follow than Jennifer. This is going to follow right on what she was talking about. Let me make sure that I can get my slides shared. All right. Hopefully everyone is seeing my slides. All right. We're getting all the clicks down. There we go. Okay. So I'm not going to read this slide to you. You know how these slides work. First, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then I'm going to tell you. Then I'll tell you what I told you. So we're going to talk about microlearning. Shocking. I want to talk to you a little bit about some questions that you can ask to optimize the effect of microlearning in your organization. And I promise you, you can discover microlearning authors anywhere. So let's talk about that. All right. I love the question that Chris just asked Jennifer, and I want to hear all of your answers to this. Think about when you first started using microlearnings. What happened when you hit send that first time? What was the reaction you got? Put your reactions in the chat. I really want to hear from you. How did it go over? Did it go over like gangbusters or, like a wet balloon? Oh, people thought it wasn't real learning. Wow, that's crazy. I love that. I didn't even know this was an option. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. If your organization is anything like mine, you're going to receive a lot of feedback and a decent amount of praise. People love the playing card view. They appreciate the responsiveness reviewing content on their phones or on their laptops, and they may say it's really easy to get through the content, as Chris mentioned. At the same time, you're going to receive a lot of requests for more microlearnings. You're going to get emails, instant messages, hallway or office drive-bys asking about how and when microlearnings can be used to accomplish whatever it is someone is trying to accomplish, which hopefully will prompt some thinking. You can't just say yes to everyone, because if everyone uses microlearning and employees are flooded, it loses its uniqueness and its effectiveness. But you can't say no to everyone either, as much as you might be tempted, because one, it's probably not in your nature. We're training people for a reason, and it's not good stewardship. We have this tool, we should use it. It's also not good internal customer service. So now what do? I suggest you establish some rules or guidelines for how and when microlearning is used. So let's think about this a little bit. And Jennifer talked about this a little bit. If you had to establish some guidelines for your organization around microlearning, what would those guidelines include? Put your answers in the chat. I'd love to see your ideas. 5 minutes or less. That's a great one, Hannah. Learning objectives, one concept. Oh, thank you. I love all the responses pouring in. It makes me feel like I'm not alone standing up here. Love it. Mobile first. Fantastic. All right. Great. Thank you so much for those responses. Keep them coming. So, oops, go back one more. All right. Here are some of the things that I came up with. First off, who are the main audiences? Is there one audience? Are there several audiences? And then how will microlearnings be sent out? Is it something that you can send out straight from the platform? Do you need to use email or text, intranet, messaging spaces? And then how could it be used? Jennifer mentioned a couple different uses in her company. It could be a communication tool. Hey, we have a new vice president. Maybe it's a reminder. Don't forget about the all hands at noon today. Or maybe it's a teacher. Here's what you need to know and do related to X. Those are all valid uses. Who should have access to the tool? Who should have the ability to decide whether a microlearning should be used in any instance? And who should have a stake in creating and enforcing those guidelines? Who's going to be your main requesters? By deliberating, deciding, and documenting your responses to these questions, you're setting limits for how and when microlearnings can be used for your organization, which maximizes the potential for microlearnings to be used effectively. So I have another question for you. Once the guidelines are decided, of course, you're going to have to communicate those. What is the best way to share microlearning guidelines with stakeholders? What would work in your company? Put your responses in the chat. I'm noticing it takes about 10 seconds for them to start rolling in. Modeling it, love that. Microlearning, hey. Roll them through IDs. Okay, awesome. Team, test drive. Yeah, fantastic. I love all of these ideas. Really, you want to do whatever works best for your organization, and every organization is different. For us, we can post them on the company intranet or shared documentation space like Confluence or SharePoint. You can put them in a newsletter, talk about them in a team meeting, whatever, but you've got to get them out there. So let's fast forward. Let's say your guidelines are out there and you're mostly following them. A stakeholder then comes to you and asks to use microlearning. Their case fits the rules. Now what? I like to begin by asking some questions to help me decide whether microlearning is really the best tool to meet the need. And if so, what kind of scope is needed? So I'll ask, what problem are you trying to solve? Or what gap are you trying to fill? Why do you think microlearning is the best solution? Who's the target audience? What are your desired outcomes, and are they measurable in any way? And what is your time frame? How urgent is it, and why? By getting responses to these questions, you can better understand whether microlearning really is the best solution. And let's be honest, sometimes it's not. Whether more than one microlearning is necessary, maybe it should be a series, who the recipients should be, and how to measure the impact. Finally, when working with stakeholders, there is one tactic that I love to try. Would you like to write the microlearning yourself? Let's be honest, nearly everyone loves to see their own efforts in action. When I ask this question, it's met with optimism, hope, and confusion all at the same time until I explain that I have a template I like to use to create microlearning content. It helps ensure the content is effective and right-sized. I can use it to create the content, or you can use it to create the content, and then we just get it reviewed. I'll admit the reactions to this explanation are sometimes filled with awe, as if I've invented some life-altering new tool, or I'm brilliant or creative or revolutionary. But let's be honest. Sure, this could be life-altering. I mean, it does make my life a lot easier, but this isn't thermonuclear physics. Let's talk through what the template looks like. I have a how to use this template section at the top. It helps ensure the template stays a template, and it guides the stakeholder in making the most of the prompts below. It also provides contact information if they need any help. Here's the critical piece. I have a best practices section that outlines how to make the most of microlearning. This section contains guidelines such as use an attention-grabbing statement or question on the first card, keep your copy short, and provide links where possible so the learner can get more information. By following these best practices, which I always emphasize when I'm explaining the template, anyone can become an effective microlearning author. Next is an about the series section, where the author can remind me what they're trying to accomplish, when, and with whom. It also has a space for an overview or outline of a series if there's going to be more than one microlearning. This section is also great for content reviewers who may be asked to validate content without having any context for the project. And let's face it, that does happen frequently. Finally, there are multiple microlearning authoring sections. Each contains a prompt for the topic of the course, when it should be shared, and what each card in the series should say. It includes a place where the author can provide links to resources, links to audio or video, suggest any imagery they'd like to include. While I do offer the microlearning table as a guideline for content, I also share that we can make a course shorter or longer, but that we should just try to keep the total learning experience within just a few minutes. Can you see something like this being useful in your organization? So awesome. So now I'm going to tell you what I told you. Let's talk about what we just talked about. First, microlearning is a fantastic tool, and it'll very likely be really well received within your organization. This means that everyone will want to use it for everything. By establishing some guidelines and governance around its use, you can ensure it remains a powerful tool in your toolbox. When those stakeholders do come around wanting to use this awesome tool, there are questions you can ask that will help you decide whether to use a microlearning and how. By asking these questions up front, you show your value as a consultative partner, helping stakeholders optimize their effectiveness. Finally, you can create and provide a template with your own best practices to help anyone in your organization become a microlearning author. Not only will stakeholders be impressed by your creativity, they'll love seeing their own efforts impact their target audience. That is all the time I have for you today. Thank you again for having me. What questions can I answer for you?
Right. Well, first of all, Bonnie, before we jump to the questions, I just want to say thank you so much for that. I think this is one of those topics that doesn't get enough airtime when we talk about things. We talk a lot about like design principles and how to create things and the different mediums and modalities in which we create stuff. And it's like those are all important questions, but they don't often answer some of the biggest challenges that I think, especially at the senior level, we face, where it's like we only have so much capacity.
Yeah.
So where do we find that line between what we create and where we let other people create and not see that as a threat to our value,
Yeah.
but walk the line carefully? And I think
That's
you've done
exactly
a
it.
fantastic job. I think you've done a fantastic job,
Thank
beautifully
you.
threading the needle on that.
Thank you. You know, I can't, and I don't think anybody can be an expert in everything. My
Yeah,
organization is big and it's vast, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's
yeah,
no way for me to keep up with everything and know
no,
everything.
no.
So, what better use of my expertise, which is learning, than to help other people to share their expertise?
That's just it. That's just it. Is there's I've when I was with GE and AbbVie, I mean these massive multinational companies where you go, there is so much demand. You can't have enough designers or
Yeah.
developers, or you just can't. And the
No.
idea that you can, you're never going to get the budget for it. And even if you do, there's the ebbs and flows of you'd end
Yeah.
up hiring people just to lay them off and go, well, we brought you in because we have this thing. Now we got to get
It's
rid of you
absolutely
because we're not there. And that's not good for anybody.
yeah.
I am curious, how do you navigate that though with one, your teams, but then also stakeholders? Because I do understand the healthy tension that exists. And I've had to wrestle through this myself a lot, where it's like, we can sometimes internally have this fear, but if we give it to them, they're going to screw it up. And that controlling side of us that goes, yeah, but their courses stink. They don't do it quite the way we do. Like, if I did it, it would be good. And we want to then pull it in. And then there's also this like, okay, but we also just can't let them run wild because we see it where people go, well, they just make a bunch of crap that doesn't add any value and they don't put any thought into it. So, how
Yeah.
have you, one, helped your team navigate that? But then also stakeholders recognize, hey, you need us, but we also are going to enable you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're so, so right. You know what? The first time I used the template, I had a stakeholder get in there, and for each card, they wrote a paragraph of information. And I had to go back and say, we're talking about microlearning, which means
Yeah.
we want it to be very short and tight. I'm happy to include all of that information, but I don't think that's a microlearning anymore. If
Right.
you want us to do a full e-learning around this topic, we can certainly discuss that. But if you want something to be short and sweet and attention grabbing, we have to do something a little bit shorter and
Yeah.
more concise. And so explaining kind of what we're trying to do has been huge. The other
Yeah.
piece is I don't actually give people access to 7 tabs except those online.
Mm.
I
Okay.
give them a
Okay.
Google
So that
Doc
helps me
that they
understand
can
your
fill out.
process of like they're filling this out. Your team's the one actually creating it.
That's exactly right, which
Got
means
it.
that I maintain control. Anybody
Okay.
that I work with will tell you that I'm a control enthusiast. I
That's a
maintain
nice way of putting
control.
it. Enthusiast.
Exactly. And I can make sure that, we're following some of the guidelines and the principles that we
Okay.
wanna follow.
Okay. So you're holding that governance intention where it's like, yes, we want to include you, but the actual dev and development of the resources is going to be
Exactly right.
maintained within our shop. Okay.
Exactly.
And so with that, because I think, one of the things that I've always found interesting, and I've seen it work where you can hand tools to the teams, but you got to do it very carefully, and it's like super
Mhm.
users and all this other stuff. But what I've actually found, because there can sometimes be resistance from
Yeah.
either side. Now, in your model, you're
Certainly.
maintaining the balance of like, well, we still created. But do you run into those situations where somebody just goes, "Yeah, but I want," and
Oh,
how
yeah.
how do you how have you found success in getting through that? Because there are those times where it's like you're going to make a Franken course, and you're like, "Okay,
Here's my response. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't have any seats available right now.
okay,
Let's use this template and we can talk through and I can give you full ability to edit. I can
okay."
share with you the course before I send it, but I just don't have any seats available in the tool right now."
Got it. Very creative. Very creative. I like that. Yeah. A little smoke and mirrors.
A
It's
little
well, because
bit,
they don't
every
know.
once in a
A little
while, there's
smoke and
nothing
mirrors.
wrong
We
with that.
had when this event first started, we had a magician that would join me on this. And so we know everybody who's OG here, they know all about the smoke and mirrors tricks that we've used
Exactly.
over here. And but you're doing it in a customer centric way, right? You're not
That's
being
exactly
difficult.
it.
You're not being a blocker. You're just
No.
saying, hey, like I'm trying to help you, but if I give you the details, we're just going to argue over how many seats and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
kind of a
Well,
thing.
and I always reinforce the point, you know your content best.
Yes.
If I go in and I start the creation, it's going to take me way longer than if I give you a template and you create it. I'll
Okay.
add the adult learning principles. You give me the source content.
Okay. Okay. I like that. No, and I think what I appreciate about your approach, because I think sometimes people will be like, what exactly is the right structure? And you're like, well, I mean, it's going to vary depending on season, org, resource size, thing like that.
Yeah,
But I think you're keeping the customer at the center of it, which really is what matters. Is like, yeah,
absolutely.
and keeping
Always.
the customer at the center doesn't mean always give the customer what they want. It means
No,
how do I enable you in a
you give
healthy
them what
way?
they need,
Okay.
not
Okay.
necessarily what they want.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So then on that, how then, because sometimes that can be difficult balancing that with L&D folks, your own teams. Like I
Absolutely.
know there have been times where I'm like, no, they know what's best.
Yeah.
And you can get L&D folks to go, nah, I'm smarter. Like
It's
that
absolutely
information is
true.
stupid, and I'm not going to put that in there. And how do you balance that with your teams where you go, hey, they do know, and that doesn't mean you're not valuable. It means we have to trust them.
It's absolutely true. And honestly, I work with a bunch of adults, and I like to think that they know what they're capable of. I have the template available, and any one of them is welcome to use the template either to create their own microlearning or
Okay.
to talk with a stakeholder. If they
Okay.
want to use the template or have the stakeholder use the template, awesome. Let's go for
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But if they want to create the micro learning themselves and they have the time to work directly with the stakeholder, that's great
Okay.
too.
I
I
like
don't
that.
have there's no one size fits all in all of
No,
this,
there's not.
right? And everybody's going to have their own preferences. I don't personally have the time to sit down with every stakeholder that asks me for micro learning to
Yeah.
go through and talk through, okay, this card should say that and this card should say that. I
Yep.
would much rather they get their ideas down and that way they can all talk amongst themselves
Yeah.
anyway. But
I like
maybe there
that.
are people on my team who do have the time and do want to do that. That's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, and I think the takeaway for everybody watching and listening to this is you said it well when you said there is no one size fits all. And I know even for me, a lot of times people are like, well, Christopher, you've done this in all these organizations. Don't you just have the way to do it? And I'm like, I don't have like the Mary Poppins carpet bag that I just pull out and I go, ta-da, here's how we do it, because there's nuances, your budget, your resources, your team. You got to understand. I mean, even stakeholder maturity. There's times where I'm like, this group gets it. I
Yeah,
can get you a license because there's trust and we can work
that's
together.
exactly it.
And then there's other times where it's like, I wouldn't hand you access to the tool if you put bamboo shoots under my fingernails because I know what you would do with it.
That's
And
exactly right.
you have to adapt to that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay. Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing this. Everybody, some of the one tactical question, just so you know, when she was saying card,
Oh,
if you're familiar with 7 taps, they're like little Instagram stories. So when you're saying card,
yeah.
I assume you mean the card, the one
Yes,
tap.
that's what we call them in our company. I don't know what they're
I
supposed to
love
be
that.
called, but they look like
I
little
know.
playing cards to me. So, yeah.
Well, and well, and it's true. That's what they are. But I also love the fact that some of the stuff you've created, stakeholders were like, "I didn't know was learning," and it's like, to me, that's the biggest compliment ever. Is when people see our stuff and go, "This doesn't feel like learning." I'm
Yes.
like, "Good," because learning should feel like what you're already doing.
It should
That's
be
how it should feel.
interesting. I
Yes,
love using the GIFs and the videos and all of that kind of stuff. My last e-learning series or micro-learning series had South Park on
love
several
it.
of the cards just because it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, SpongeBob has a lot of great memes too. I know he's
See,
one of
there
my
you go.
favorites to throw in there. So